Dear students, this is my third lecture on Oedipus the King. In my previous lecture, I had already suggested you to start reading the text. I hope you have already done it, or you have at least started reading the text. Today, in this lecture, I shall talk about the role of fate in Greek tragedy in general, and the role of fate in Oedipus the King in particular. So, let's just start. Actually, I shall start with a quotation from King Lear, a famous tragedy written by William Shakespeare. The lines occur in Act 4, Scene 1, and in line numbers 37 and 38. Gloucester is the speaker here, who says, As flies to wanton boys are we to gods, they kill us for their sport. I repeat it, as flies to wanton boys are we to gods, they kill us for their sport. If you have already read the play King Lear, you must understand that Gloucester uttered these words in sheer hopelessness after he was blinded by Cornwall and Regan. The lines are highly evocative of the dramatic fact that Gloucester had completely resigned to his fate and held gods responsible for the inhuman suffering and the misfortunes he was undergoing. You will see, instead of retrospective self-analysis to find the flaws in his own character, he accused gods for the misfortunes, right? So in this play, you will see both Lear and Gloucester were victims of filial ingratitude and subsequent sufferings. Now, what I wish to actually wish you to notice is that the character of Gloucester is projected starkly antithetical to Lear. Lear, who is no longer a king at this point of time, who is now an old man, a madman. Okay, Lear was here a tragic hero in this drama, but not Gloucester. So what I want you to see is Gloucester is projected first of all and as antithetical to the character of Lear. Secondly, Lear is the tragic hero, projected tragic hero, unlike Gloucester. So, Lear had gained the knowledge through anagnorisis that he was himself responsible for his suffering, and neither any god nor his fate played any role behind this misfortune. But Gloucester, in case of Gloucester, this was beyond his capacity to think in terms of these logics. Right. So this is in fact one of the reasons which made King Lear the tragic hero and not Gloucester. Right. Because Gloucester lacked this capacity of Lear, as I mentioned. Now, what I mean to deduce and suggest is that although Gloucester's erroneous supposition in the lines quoted herein, that as flies to the wanton boys are we to gods, so in these lines there is a kind of erroneous supposition by Gloucester, because he could not trace out the flaws, the mistakes of his own character. Right, but the lines are truly applicable and explicable for a Greek tragedy, because that is what actually happens in a Greek tragedy. As flies to wanton boys are we to God. Now, as Oedipus himself also laments toward the end of the play to chorus after his miserable fall, that Apollo friends, quote unquote, Apollo friends, Apollo has laid this agony upon me. I have been talking about this fate and destiny extensively also in my previous lecture without explaining the ideas of fate or say destiny or say curse, etc. So now let's begin with the very fundamental question: what is fate? If you want to answer this question, you should put it very simply as fate is the will of God or gods. Fate is the will of God or gods. According to Greeks, fate of a human is shaped by divine forces that are uncontrollable. Greeks believed that if a man performs an action, it's not by him, but it is his fate actually that is operating from back, and that is fully functional beyond his knowledge. Okay, and we modern people, however, do not believe in fate in the same way as Greeks did, but I cannot rule out that we do not believe in fate, right? Because many among us still visit astrologers to know our fate, what is there in future. Now, in Greek mythology, the concept of fate is not singular; it is in plural. Why so? Because it is mythically fates are three women. Mythically, fates are three women, namely Atropos, Clotho, and Lachesis. Okay, Atropos, Clotho, and Lachesis. So these are the three women who are always engaged in spinning the strings of life, thereby determining the cycle of a person's life. It means that you are not in charge of your fate. It means that you are not in charge of your fate. Instead, everything is preordained, predestined. What more, fate can be either good or bad, right? Fate can be either good or bad. The word fate comes from the Latin word fatum, F-A-T-U-M, F-A-T-U-M, fatum, which means that already spoken, or which has been spoken. So etymologically, it is something that is spoken or may not be retrieved or taken back. Okay, so that is fate. Now, the concept of destiny is tightly associated with fate. What is destiny? Destiny is where your fate ultimately lands you at. Etymologically, coming from the Latin word destinare, spelling D-E-S-T-I-N-A-R-E, destinare, meaning solid or firm establishment. The word destiny stands for the ultimate destination of your life, the path of which is already determined or designed or destined by fate. Hence, as per Greek myth, since fate was preordained, so was the destiny. One cannot work against it. King Laius was destined to be killed by Oedipus, so fate brings them together and meet at that triple crossroads. In modern concept, the role of fate in one's life is simply discarded. Instead, it is the character and the character's action which are held responsible for the misfortune or suffering or whatever the character comes across in his life. As you will see in Elizabethan tragedies, also particularly in Shakespearean tragedies, that the role of fate is completely, in fact, discarded or cancelled. Instead, the character is projected as the prime factor. The character, the human action is projected as the prime factor behind the whatever the tragic fate that the tragic hero meets or faces. Well, I believe you could uh, understand this pretty elaborate discussion on fate and destiny. Let us now try to be specific about the role of fate in the drama Oedipus the King. As I said, I will be discussing the role of fate in the drama in particular. So let's start. And also in terms of your motivation for exam-oriented preparation, of course, this is a crucial topic. So, what is the role of fate in Oedipus the King? In Oedipus the King, you will see that role of fate is operational. Operational quite in an institutionalized way. Why I say this? It is quite normal in Greek plays because the ancient Greeks believed that their gods could see the future. and that certain people could assert and ascertain their fate, right? And they had certain people had access to these informations, what is going to happen in your life, about your fate. In my previous lecture, I repeatedly mentioned about prophecy, fate, and also about oracles. Now, this is a prime time. We come to learn about these terms, especially about oracles in particular, okay, so that you understand it better. So, what is actually an oracle? At the outset of the drama, if you have started reading the text, you will see that Creon was sent to the oracle, and he comes back with the oracle's message, right? So you might wonder who or what is this oracle? An oracle was the highest priest of a certain god. Okay, here particularly the oracle we are talking about in the drama Oedipus the King is the oracle of god Apollo. So whom this oracle also had in fact foretold the fate of Oedipus, and this is the same oracle who now suggested the very way out, okay, to get rid of the plague that had affected the city of Thebes. So here oracle, as I told you, oracle is the highest priest, the highest priest who highest priest of Apollo, okay, and Creon visited him. Now an oracle was basically is basically an intermediate agency, or you can call simply the mediator between whom? Between a certain god, here Apollo, and the human being, okay, on the planet. So these oracles always there were always there in a Greek tragedy, playing a vital role as an absent character. His role was a sheer objective, but extremely forceful. These oracles were the high priests who usually conveyed the prophecy of gods to the concerned person following a curse. Okay, as I mentioned, following a curse. So there will be a curse, as it happened in case of King Laius. So I will come to that point once again sooner or later. Now, whatever we said in this prophecy was bound to happen. So this is fate. Now, King Laius had murdered Chrysippus, son of Pelops, king of Pisa. I hope you remember this point. I had mentioned it earlier in my previous lecture, and this is how King Laius had incurred the curse. So following this curse, the prophecy to King Laius was that his son will kill him, and his son will also marry his wife. Thus the lives of King Laius and Jocasta and Oedipus thus got to be sewn by their fate, preordained fate. Now, how much institutionalized was the role of fate will be further clear with another example. In the play, Tiresias himself is a character. And who was Tiresias? Tiresias was a prophet, a seer, with gifted capacity of visions of past, present, and as well as future. In the course of the drama, Oedipus, with his characteristic arrogance, gets involved in a kind of tirade with Tiresias, in a brawl with Tiresias. It is an extremely dramatic episode, and there is a strong ironic understatement, because here one is equipped with the knowledge and the visionary capacity to see everything, and another is disarmed by ignorance. So, of course, I mean Tiresias and Oedipus, respectively, where Tiresias knows everything and Oedipus knows nothing. By this time, I believe you have already understood how much fate bears an omnipotent role in the lives of almost all the characters in the play, and a chilling spell over and it casts a chilling spell over almost every incident that takes place. The interplay with all its small parts and details is exemplary of the role of fate, right? So, however, the role of fate, as has been expounded in the play, does not make it an ordinary one or at par with any other Greek play per se. Why? Because Sophocles, a highly educated and erudite stalwart of his own time, and he had such an acumen of character portrayal that he portrayed the characters in such a way that those turned out to be quite innovative, and innovative in the sense that these were this technique or this very method of character portrayal were not followed previously. A number of critics have opined that Sophocles, in fact, has broken a tradition of character portrayal. Okay, previously these were kind of flat characters, but this is for the first time in Sophocles we find that he is portraying the kind of round characters. Okay, there is a development from the beginning to the end in the characters. So Sophocles has what Sophocles has done for his characters, actually, especially in case of Oedipus, we see that Oedipus is not completely or entirely bound by the rule of fate. Rather, Oedipus also practices and exhibits his free will or choice of his own action, right? And this is happening beyond the drama and also within the drama. You must notice that Sophocles starts his play at the time when Oedipus has already killed his father, King Laius, married his mother, Jocasta. So technically, you see, when the play opens, the prophecy is already fulfilled. Therefore, Oedipus in this play is no longer an instrument or an instrument of a preordained fate. He is free with his own choices. This is where lies Sophocles' extraordinary acumen, as I was talking about. So, very delicately, Sophocles is actually intending here to break and violate the framework of a Greek story that essentially exhibited a predetermined course of action of its characters. Sophocles' Oedipus is quite free to choose his own course of action. Finally, when Oedipus blinds himself by gouging out his eyes, and as he himself commented toward the end of the play, that though he could not, in fact, avert what was there in fate, but this is his own, in fact, reaction of for to have gouged out his eyes. Now, we'll see that it is by the choice of his own character, by his choice of free will, Oedipus had called upon him a number of misfortunes, uncalled for misfortunes. He did not wish to when Oedipus meets Tiresias. We'll see that Tiresias wished to convince him. Tiresias tried to convince him to come out of the very search for the truth of his parentage, of his actual identity. So Oedipus said, "You bear your burdens, I will bear mine burdens. It's better that way. Please believe me." But Oedipus did not believe in Tiresias. Later on, you will see Jocasta also repeatedly persuaded him to let the issue go and not overburden himself with his persistent effort in search for truth. Oedipus himself makes a different argument at the end of the play when he says these terrible deeds were actually fated. So finally, I will say that one might argue, put forward the counter argument that it was the sudden outbreak of plague and the subsequent interference of the oracle to whom Creon had visited, had but bound Oedipus once again by the preordained fate. Because why I am discussing these two things in an analogical pattern, that some groups of people, they believe that Oedipus was completely bound by fate. His every action was bound by fate, preordained, predestined. But modern critics, they are differing. They are differing because they believe that Oedipus had practiced or exhibited a free will, or choice of free will, and he acted accordingly, not controlled by fate always, but he acted of his own by applying his free will. That is why I am discussing all these points. It is true that the oracle that I just talked about, the oracle had interfered. It is true, but what did the oracle do at this time? Did he tell, and did he in fact prophesize? Did he give any prophecy? No, the oracle did not give any prophecy at this time. Rather, oracle just gave a message. What was the message? The message was that there is the murderer of King Laius still living in the soil of the Thebes, and he must be banished, either banished or killed, in order to do away the plague that is ravaging the Thebes, the city of Thebes at the time. So this was just a message which Oedipus could have ignored. But Oedipus could not ignore. Oedipus was a good king in the sense he was a good administrator, and he had always seen the misfortunes, the plight and pangs and pains of his subject sympathetically. So he could not sit idle. He had to act first, and he had to act immediately because his people were suffering, right? So he started searching for the murderer. Ironically, he himself was the murderer. So here I will end this lecture. Please wait for the next lecture. Thank you.